Welcome back to episode 50 of What's the Dill. I cannot believe it's been 50 episodes. This podcast started 2.5 years ago in 2020 with Tanya, when we talked about our marriage, our relationship, all the things with going on with our lives together, and how we met, what we do, how we live out our life. And it started as a pandemic project, something that I felt I wanted to do to just, continue to be creative as the whole world was shut down. And we had a great run with that. We did like 30 something episodes. And then I felt this this feeling stirring in my heart to continue on the podcast by myself for now. Tanya might come on, but to speak about my faith and speak about the faith of our of all you out there, and speak in a more direct way about being faithful. As I'm building Backseat Media, I wanted to use this podcast as like a flag in the ground of, what I stand for, what I believe, what I see going on out in the world, how I live out my faith in the everyday. So that's what it's kind of become. But it's been 50 episodes and it's been a couple years. It's been crazy. It's been fun to build this, to do this, to put out content and things out in the world and get feedback on it, to see how it affects people, to see how it doesn't affect people, to kind of do this creative endeavor that is so out there, and it kind of has no purpose besides me doing this for Christ. You know what I mean? Like when you put it out in the world, when I put out this podcast in the world, that voice in my head's always kind of like, who is this for? Why are you doing this? No one's going to hear this. And, those fears of the outcomes of these podcasts and these videos is something that's in my head. But as I live out my life for Christ, and I see that this is a tool that Christ wants to use through me and with me for the good of his kingdom, it makes sense. So, I don't think about the outcomes with these things as I'm building Backseat Media and building this podcast. I think about what it's for and the purpose of it. So that's been kind of the lessons of 50 episodes of What's the Dill over the past couple years. And thank you all of you who watch this, who listen to this. It may seem like texting me or talking to me about this episodes that you hear isn't like worth anything, but it means a lot to me. And I love hearing the impact of, I love getting the feedback, because I love to hear what people take away from it, because then my mind goes toward how can I, make this a better listening and viewing experience for all of you out there. So I've loved all the feedback I've gotten from all of you, and I really appreciate it. So on to today's episode. I have a lot of thoughts about how I wanted to start making episodes geared towards guys and young men, particularly who are following Christ or trying to follow Christ. And I felt like I want to speak into that more deeply. So for today's episode, I want to talk about why guys won't follow Jesus. What are the hangups that guys have for not following Jesus? Now, tell me if you've heard this before. Tell me if you've heard this question before. Where are all the young guys in church? How come young guys don't, come to our young professionals event? I feel like the girls really outnumber the guys at this thing. Oh my gosh, where are all the good single young Catholic guys? Tell me if you've heard that before. And maybe you've heard that as a guy at one of these events. Maybe you've heard that as a guy who is getting texted by someone to come join an event or come to church or go to a group. Maybe you've heard that as a young gal, at events and saying, hey, where are all the young guys here? And we all know that, the world needs on fire guys to live out the faith. And from my perspective, there's a few reasons I'm going to get into of why men wouldn't follow Christ, and then my responses to that. But, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit for a minute about this kind of problem we see. There can be this problem of guys not following Christ. And, what is the, what's the branding of a guy who's like on fire for Christ. Maybe it's like a priest. Like, oh, he's so holy. He's so on fire for Jesus that he became a priest. Or like, okay, that makes sense. But I think the gap is that we need men who are on fire for Christ, who are living normal, everyday lives and letting that fire for living out Christ's will for their lives be manifested every single day in jobs, in school, in relationships. So we all know that there is this gap. We can all see it. We can feel it. Why is that the case? I think number one, the main reason, the root of why guys aren't following Christ is fear. That is the main characteristic of why a guy won't follow Jesus. It's fear. Now, as guys, we are not meant to, society doesn't let us handle fear well. We're not supposed to be fearful. We're not supposed to be afraid. As guys, we're supposed to be competent, strong, confident, not be afraid of anything. Hey, do you want to do that? No, I'm good. What, are you scared? No, I'm not scared. Hey, come, why don't you come on this, trip with us? Oh, no, I don't want, what are you afraid of this? Are you afraid of going over here? We kind of get judged for being afraid of things as a society. And so as guys, it's really easy to then start building walls around our heart to make sure that no one thinks we're afraid of anything. Spicy food? Yeah, I love spicy food. I'm not afraid of that. Trying to take a huge internship to, that you have to wake up at 4 a.m. Yeah, I'm not afraid of that. Whatever it is, money, relationships, job, we are programmed by society to not be afraid. So why are men afraid of following Jesus? Well, firstly, I think guys are afraid of following Jesus because they're afraid they'll lose their independence. And, the personal freedoms that we have, we want to be free to go off and see the world, to go off and, experience different things in life, to go off and be, make money. Guys can have this programming to have huge independence, a lot of independence. And if you fall in line, well, you're missing out. You're missing out on everything. And if you follow Jesus, that means you're going to have to give up Sundays. You're going to have to give up, how much you drink, the people you hang out with. You're going to have to give up, make all these sacrifices for, your time. Now your time is no longer yours. It's God's. And you're going to have to now adjust to God's time, not your time. And I think men really value their independence because, I think deep down guys don't like to be told what to do. It's not natural for a guy just to be told what to do. Guys want to carve out their time and use that time for the betterment of themselves, for, their career, for, their social lives. And following Christ, that means you now give up a chunk of that. You give up a lot of that for Jesus. And I think that's a really big fear that guys have, that they're going to lose their independence. Afraid of the sacrifices that they're going to have to make. Afraid of the choices they'll have to make in the future that are going to give up, these things, that their potential earnings, their potential jobs, their potential relationships, their potential social groups. And if guys don't have that independence to choose what they want, when they want, where they want, this freedom, this perceived freedom that they have, that's not worth it. And I think it goes deep into our society's ideas of freedom is so backwards. We think freedom is do what you want, when you want, where you want, however you want. No one can tell you what to do. That's what our society tells us now. No one can tell you what to do. That's freedom. That's utter freedom, altogether freedom. No one can tell you what to do. You can act however you want. But we know that true freedom lives in Jesus Christ, that our lives can be free from pain, free from the horrible things in this life, because we know our hope's in Jesus. So we don't have to go down the roads of, isolation, the roads of anguish, the roads of, personal torment, because our hope lies in Jesus. So the world says, yeah, you're free. You're free to do whatever you want. No one can tell you what to do. We know that Jesus says freedom in me, Christ Jesus, is the freedom to be hopeful in good times, hopeful in bad times, that Jesus is taking care of all the details. So I think guys are afraid of losing their independence. Like, I think guys are really afraid of that. So what is the rebuttal? What's the answer to that? What is the answer to guys' fears of losing their independence in following Jesus? As men, we have to be careful about the things that we let be our masters in our life. Like, there can only be one master, and that's Jesus Christ. We have to be careful about the things that we're letting take hold of our life and lead our life and be the goals for our life. Whether it's money, like I just talked about, power, success, kind of worldly success, reputation. I know that's a big one, where it's like, how do I want to be perceived? I am going to do everything in my life to manipulate the conversations, the things I do, the people I hang out with, so I am perceived as a confident, successful person, where people, they don't know the real me, but my reputation, I'm just controlling my reputation. We have to be careful about the things that we let be our masters in our life. And, another one would be like pleasures, the things of this world, drugs, drinking, sex, impurity, all these things. Like, those things can take a hold of your life. The pleasures of the world can take a hold of your life, and you can get absolutely in a cycle of just, having the world and the pleasure of the world be the thing you seek, and the thing you seek, and then you need more and more and more and more of it. And when you're only serving yourself, the end is only to be to serve yourself more. But when you serve Jesus, the end result of that is that he gives you back love. He gives you back 10x what you could ever give from our service. So I think that we have to be careful as men about the masters we're letting take control of our life. And that, if you're out there and you're afraid of losing your independence, realize that Jesus is going to give 10x what the world could ever give. Think about the times where you served yourself the most. Where has it led you? Has it led you to greater happiness? Has it led you to greater joy? Has it led you to greater relationships? Think about the times where you've really sought out, a lot of money, where you've really sought out, personal freedom. Has it led to a better life? And I think that's the key, is that really analyze and look at the times when we serve ourselves and we only think about ourselves and our personal gain, and the times that we think about others. So fear of losing your independence, it's there's going to be sacrifices. We're always going to be serving some master, whether it's power, money, success, or it's going to be Jesus Christ. And the difference is that the worldly things, they only will corrupt you in the end. Jesus will never, ever fail you. Number two, I think the number two fear that guys feel for not following Jesus, the fear that gets in the way of them following Jesus, is the fear of being judged. I think, reputation is something that a lot, doesn't really get talked about a lot in terms of that being a motivator and a motivation for what guys do. I think reputation is a big thing. I think guys, maybe want to be independent, like we said, but also guys don't want to be out on their own and being judged by everyone. So no, guys don't want to stick out too much and then everyone's judging them. And I think that the fear that guys can have of what will people say? What will people think of me? How will my friends react? How will my coworkers react? How will my teachers, my professors, the people in my life, what are they going to say if I really live out my faith? And, I've had that fear. I still battle with that fear. So I think about that a lot, of kind of what do people say, when you live out your faith, you're trying, I like basketball, everything's not always talking about Jesus, but then how do you kind of combine the two things, our life together here in society, but then also life with Christ? How does that work out in the everyday? And, the fear of being judged, I've definitely felt that. What are people going to think of me? I've never really felt that too much with the sin in my life, which is crazy. I've never really felt people are going to judge me for these sins. I just have tried to hide sin from people. But the fear of being judged from people, of how are people going to react if I live out my faith, that's something really, really like big that I felt. And I think that like a lot of times nowadays also there's this idea of like if I really live out my faith, people are gonna think that I'm like hateful. That there's this idea that like being Christian is like hateful. Now think of how crazy it is that in today's modern society, people see Christianity as synonymous with hateful. So, I mean, that's super backwards because we know that literally God is love. All love stems from Jesus. And that, like, this reputation that has been twisted around so much that, like, being Christian is actually a hateful thing. I think that stops a lot of guys from following Jesus, from even, like, answering the call on the hearts. Maybe they want something more, but they're afraid to go follow Jesus because what would that mean? What would that mean for their families, their cousins, their friends? How would I tell anyone about this? So I think the fear of being judged is a really, really big one. And how do we like answer that? Well, I think as Christians, we need to then make sure that our communities are super welcoming, super rock solid, are amazing places to be so that when people enter them, they feel welcomed and they say, yes, these are my people. You are my brothers and sisters in Christ. Because like there's nothing worse than maybe going to, an event or something you don't know anyone. You know that feeling of like, oh, like, hey, like, I'm here by myself, kind of bouncing around, the edges, the walls, the edges of the room, and you don't know anyone. And, nothing's better than when someone comes up to you and says, hey, what's up? My name's Pete. Like, how you doing? Where you from? Oh, come over and meet all these people. And then you feel like you're kind of like right into the party, the event, the group, whatever it is. And you're kind of like seamlessly a part of that. We need to make sure that our Christian communities are rock solid for welcoming people, that we are going out of our way, not just to like make sure that we feel filled up, but that people who are new are feeling filled up. And like letting our communities be a light to people, because people feel isolated nowadays. That's like the most common thing, is that people feel isolated. Like, do you feel isolated sometimes? Do you feel isolated all the time? Well, you're not alone, because people nowadays are feeling more isolated than ever. Well, we have the answer for that. As Christians, we have the answer. Communities are the bedrock of, the Christian life. And that is since like Jesus' time. Like when Paul was helping build all these communities, they were helping live out our faith. And so we need to make sure that as an antidote for people feeling judged, for a guy who's maybe feeling judged for living out his faith by people, that they can feel welcomed and have a great community, maybe a new community that's going to like help live out the faith and help be like a light to the world, and not just something that's like this fearful, hey, who are these people? I don't know how to enter in, to this life. No, like our Christian communities need to be rock solid, welcoming places that are just, continuously trying to outreach people and evangelize everyone, not just at church or after church and events, but out in the world. Out in the world, school, work, you can tell people about these communities that you're involved in and your church that you're involved in, because it'll be like an answer for our society, and be an answer for men who maybe have a fear of being judged. Third and lastly, I think a really big fear that guys have for not following Christ and a hang up for not following Jesus is the fear of missing out. Classic FOMO. I think a lot of guys have FOMO, that they think if I follow Jesus, I'm going to miss out on experiences, people, relationships, travel, all of the good things life has to offer. That's really, really common. It's like, I can't sacrifice the things I want in this life, and following Christ will just be this boring, mundane, banal, nothing life. That's just going to mass, going to boring things where there's just water and dry cookies at events, and that's it. And as we know, and this is my response to that. So I think FOMO is a really big fear that guys have for not following God. My response to that is that following God is the greatest adventure you'll ever have. Following Jesus will be the door that unlocks all the things you truly want in this life. Do you want to travel? Do you want to see the world? If you follow Jesus, opportunities are going to come. Do you want to, be successful in your profession? Opening the door to following Jesus, opportunities are going to come. Do you want to have people and relationships and a social life that helps build your faith? Open the door to Jesus, and there will be more relationships in your life and more people in life than you can handle. And like that, it's so funny because like it's everything. All these fears about following Jesus are always the exact opposite. Where it's like fear of missing out, fear that I'm not going to have fun in this life. And I've had that before. That like all those things I've explained of fears I've had. If I follow Jesus, it's going to be boring. It's going to be nothing. But like all of the great things in my life all have flowed from a life with Christ. It all have flowed from following Jesus. All of the bad things in my life, all of the troubles, all of the pain, all of the sin, all of the scars have flowed from my own weakness and my personal sin. So it's like life with Jesus is the greatest adventure, and it will literally take you to the ends of the earth. I mean, there are Christ followers at every corner of this world. It's like, you want to go? You can go. Do you want to go to remote lands? There's going to be Christians there. There's going to be churches there. There's going to be communities there. So, I think a lot of times like this idea that if I follow Jesus, my life's going to be boring and it's just going to be like a church-going nobody. That is the exact opposite. And when you think about it, like think about when you meet someone who's really on fire for Christ. There's always exciting things happening. It's never just like, another day, another dollar. It's like, no, like a life with Christ brings opportunities of this world. Like not only is there like eternal rewards, opportunities of this world come to your door when you open it for a life with Christ. When you open the door for Jesus, opportunities come to your door. And, I think that like we need to promote this. We need to talk about this. We need to share our experiences with people, when it involves Jesus. Like I went to the Philippines, went to Ecuador, went to El Salvador. I went to these places towards, foreign lands that were fun, wild, crazy, all because I said yes to following Jesus, because I said yes to missionary opportunities. Life with Jesus is always awesome and fun and exciting. And we need to talk about the exciting, fun times and show people, hey, this is not just a boring life. This is an awesome life. And even in the everyday normal life, that's great too. Like, you want to talk about an awesome home life, a husband or wife that loves you, a kid that loves you, parents who love you, no troubles, like right relationships. Those are great things. Those are things people would strive for. People would absolutely like sell all of their possessions to have like right relationships in their life, to have someone who really loves them, someone who tells the truth to them, doesn't lie to them. So it's like these great things, proper relationships with those around us who we love, opportunities that are going to come if we trust in God, and the exciting things that happen, these are all behind the door of following Jesus. And behind the door of serving ourselves is pain, sin, and sorrow. And that's the end of it. When we serve ourselves, that's the most we can ever get, is just to serve ourselves. But Christ has a plan for all of us that is going to be more exciting than you can ever imagine. And if you don't believe that, ask him to show you. If you do not believe that Jesus has the greatest plan imaginable for you, that's going to be fun, exciting, and crazy, ask him to show you, and he'll show you. That's it for me today. Thank you guys all for checking in. This is the 50th episode. I look forward to 50 more, 150 more, 5,000 more, who knows. But thank you all for watching and listening. I really appreciate you checking in. I really appreciate you being a part of this journey. And if you know any guys who would benefit from seeing this episode or listening to this episode, share this with them. Share this episode with them. Have them reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk about why life with Christ is awesome and why men shouldn't be afraid to follow Jesus. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.